Quiet on the set, quiet on the set. All right, lights, camera, action! Welcome back to another edition of The House That Alan Built. I'm Scott Kinmartin. With me, as always, we don't have Greg today. He broke his tailbone. No, he didn't, but he did do something a little foolish that any Bills Mafia member would be proud of. So, here we go. So Greg couldn't be here today. He's resting his body, but I'm here and I've got my buddy Chris watching. He might jump in on the next episode, which will be our preview for the Bengals matchup. So let's get to it. The Bills at Dolphins, episode 33. Recap, our predictions, we didn't predict very well. The over-under was 43.5. That obviously was the over, so we both hit on that. But as far as the Bills being 14-point favorites and us going quite a bit over that, they won. But it was 34-31. It was by a field goal. So the Dolphins did quite a bit to cause us to struggle on offense, and Josh Allen had another fumble. He had 3 fumbles, but one of them was actually lost. So 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I want to go over the implied score was 29-15, which would have been those 14 points. As you know, the Bills won by 3 points, which is Damar Hamlin's number. That game between the Bills and the Dolphins was the most watched wild card game in 9 years, according to Buffalo Rumblings. The stat of the week, the Bills are now 4-1 against the Dolphins in the postseason. That includes the 90s era and then 2023. Previous matchup this season, as you know, this is the 3rd time the Bills faced the Dolphins. The Dolphins were 2-0. The Bills were 2-0. We went down to Miami September 25th during that hot day when the heat index was 120 on the field. Miami, of course, their home field advantage was not only the heat, but the Bills had the sun directly in their face where Miami had the shadow on their half of the field, which sucks. But as you could see, Allen was exhausted. At the end of the game, you could tell when he was giving a hug to Tua that it was just, he was drained of everything possible. So the second time they got together, Miami was 7-point underdogs, and they kept it close once again. That was a 32-29 victory for the Bills. So once again, 3 points. Allen had 300 yards, where the first game he had 400 yards, and the Bills had 500 yards in offense. So all 3 games, when you're looking at the box score, you'll see that the Bills dominated. But it's that Miami defense, and it's us getting in our own ways. There's a lot of stupid mistakes that Allen makes, especially in the red zone. In his first 4 years in the league, he had 2 red zone interceptions. This year, he's had 5. We can't have that in the playoffs, especially because if we've got 3 more games between the Bengals, and we win that, the Chiefs, then we win that, then we got to face someone in the NFC like Hurts and the Eagles, or Prescott and the Cowboys, or the Niners, who are the best defense in the league. We cannot afford to do that. And this year was up and down, up and down, up and down. And you can always count on Allen correcting his mistakes, but then he has slip-ups when he becomes complacent and doesn't take what the defense gives him, throws too deep for the home run hot shot, and it doesn't always work, especially when you're throwing to a rookie. But there were some drops on both sides of the ball. Skylar Thompson, he did his best, 18 for 45. That's 45 attempts for a 7th-round rookie, and 18 of them were completions. He had 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown to Gesicki, and overall his QBR was 44.7. Not that great. I thought he was more mobile. He had 2 rushes for 3 yards, so anytime we got him outside of the pocket, he was just looking to throw it away. He was looking to get it away because he didn't want to be sacked, which is exactly what happened to Josh Allen. He was sacked 7 times. And even though he threw for 352 and his QBR was 93.1, he looked off. You know, that first drive, he looked great. He threw it right down the middle, got Diggs a couple times, and we had a couple drops. But we at least scored. And then we give it to Miami. We get the ball back again. We go up 17-0, which was 21-0, but they called back a Knox drop. And we ended up going 17-17 right before halftime. We kicked a field goal and went up 20-17. That game was a nail-biter and way too close for comfort. When you're playing a division rival, you're likely to have a close matchup, but I did not expect it to be that close. Allen, if he were to throw 3 touchdown passes or more this week against the Bengals, he would set an NFL record. Right now, there are 3 quarterbacks in NFL history who have thrown for 20 touchdowns in their first 9 playoff games. Allen has 17 after 7, so he could set a record with 20 in 8 games. With that being said, we get into our offense. Singletary, 10 rushes, 48 yards. Cook, 12 rushes, 39 yards. They averaged about 3 or 4 yards per carry. Wasn't bad. Allen only rushed 4 times for 20 yards, but a 5-yard average, I'll take it. Against the Bengals, I'm thinking, especially going against Sam Hubbard and some of these other guys, that their defensive ends are their strength, and our offensive tackles are hit or miss. And Dawkins, who's by far our best lineman, he got blown up a couple times. So if he can run and break free of those defensive ends who are rushing on the corners, I'm thinking that we'll be fine. As you know, Burrow is good against the pass rush, so is Josh Allen. But Josh Allen has made a lot more mistakes than Burrow, so they may only rush 4. The Bills can't afford to rush 4 or rush more than 4 and get to Burrow, because he's more likely to stay in the pocket and make mistakes and get sacked than he is to throw an interception when you're blitzing him and taking a chance with less guys in coverage. Dawson Knox had a touchdown again. That is his 5th touchdown. 1 touchdown in 5 consecutive games. Maybe he can be the Gabe Davis in the playoffs. Speaking of which, Gabe Davis had 113 yards and a touchdown. That was 1 yard shy of Diggs' 114 yards. He's been reliable every game. And I think a lot of that has to come down to not having Beasley all year. So the only one he could really rely on was Diggs. He was throwing a lot of passes to Davis, but he became known for those drops this year. And he's really worked on the jugs machine. That's the machine that you would normally use for baseball or softball. And they have one for footballs as well. So he'll sit there after practice and catch 130 balls nonstop. He's the last one in the weight room, the last one on the field. In the offseason, that's all he does. He's had some easy catches he's dropped, and then the super hard ones are the ones that he makes insane catches. It's a lot like Knox in that regard. Davis had 113. That's playoff Davis. We'll get into more of his stats in the next episode, a breakdown from each year. It's only his 3rd year, and he's 26 years old, so there's a lot of hope for him in the future. And Beasley, who was actually officially signed to the active roster, where he was being elevated previously like John Brown from the practice squad, he is officially signed to the active roster. So he will be with us for the rest of the season through the playoffs. Hopefully there's a lot more games. He had 2 catches on 5 targets for 35 yards. Hines had 1 catch on 2 targets for 7 yards. Brown had 1 target, no catches. And Quentin Morris was 1 of 1 for 12 yards. As far as our defense, Buffalo and Miami are both tied for 13th in the league for sacks. And in this game, Miami sacked us 7 times. We were able to get to Thompson 4 times. I expected more, especially going against a rookie. Milano had 2 sacks in this game. He's very effective. He actually is the most effective when he's sent in for a blitz than any other player in the entire NFL. He had 3.5 sacks during the regular season and 2 sacks so far in the playoffs in 1 game. Not bad for him. Oliver had a sack and Boogie Basham had a sack. As far as interceptions go, Buffalo ranks 4th with 17. Miami ranks 29th with 8. The Bills had 2 interceptions. The Dolphins had 2 interceptions. So it was a pretty sloppy game. It was a close game. There was a lot of scoring. It's kind of what you want to see in a divisional opponent, but in the wild card round. Matt Milano had 10 tackles and 2 sacks. Taron Johnson, 7 tackles and a pass defense. Edmonds, who had a massive hit, had 5 tackles and 4 passes defense. Basham had the 5 tackles and 1 sack we mentioned. Marlowe had 4 tackles. He's the one that's been filling in for DeMar Hamlin, who filled in for Micah Hyde, who is currently in the 21-day window where he's practicing now, but he's not able to play in the game. He's already been ruled out for this weekend. There's speculation if the Bills move on, he may be playing against the Chiefs if we play them, or the Jaguars. Miami's Xavier Howard had 3 tackles and 1 interception with 2 pass defense. And Javon Holland, between Howard and Holland, their safety and cornerback, those 2 are unbelievable with interceptions and passes defense. They're in coverage like Poyer and White are when they're in their prime. I enjoy watching them. I don't like seeing them play against the Bills because we did have 2 receivers over 100 yards, but it wasn't because of them. It was usually the other corners here. Bradley Chubb had a sack. Jerome Baker had 7 tackles and a sack. Elijah Campbell had half a sack with Jalen Phillips, who last time gave us a lot of trouble. Phillips is a very good, what is he, a tackle? Yes, he's a tackle. Christian Wilkins, 4 tackles and a sack. And if you remember Josh Allen pushing Wilkins, that wasn't because of this game. If you remember, they go back. They have history. It's the same guy that grabbed Josh Allen's nuts. And it's the same one who's hit him cheap shots here and there. You'll look at other plays when you watch the All-22 version of the full field. You'll see them going at it in other plays, not just the ones where the camera focuses on them. The biggest thing is Allen is undersized by 70 pounds. And when he pushed Wilkins, he actually fell. Allen's the one who fell. But he got up, held his own, pushed him a couple more times, and then he started to fight. All of his offensive linemen, especially Mitch Morse and Spencer Brown, came over and just pile drove Wilkins to the ground. It was funny because Allen turned around and just kind of walked away after he started the fight. And they had offsetting penalties, which I think is stupid in the NFL. When there's 3 guys on one team and 1 on the other, I feel like the one who has more penalties actually should get penalized. And in this case, it would have been against the Bills. And it's kind of Josh Allen's fault. I know Wilkins initiated a hit, but when a quarterback is making a football move and they no longer have the ball, they're on the defense, you're allowed to block them. I respect his lineman defending him because Allen kind of picked up right from there and didn't like Wilkins, and a lot of it had to do with much more than just that play, whether it was you consider it dirty or not. But anyway, got a little chippy in the wild card round. The Dolphins, Raheem Mostert, thank God he was out. Last time he had over 100 yards against us, but unfortunately he has a broken thumb. And they had a bunch of banged up linemen. I expected us to do better against them. Robert Hunt, who is their stud guard, he had to move the tackle, which he played in college as well. Their offensive line being so decimated, I expected us to be the ones with 7 sacks. So it's a little disappointing since Von Miller's gone out. Rousseau and Basham and Oliver and all the rest of the defensive line, they haven't really elevated their game as much. For the first couple of games, they did. And since then, it's just been less than impressive. Isaiah McKenzie was out. He has a hamstring. Now, this week, I believe he's been practicing. Yesterday, they did a walkthrough, and he was considered limited. And then today, he was full on Thursday. But that allowed Cole Beasley to play more, and I think going forward, that may happen, unfortunately. As much as I like the face of the franchise, Isaiah McKenzie, I feel like Beasley is more reliable and he's got a lot more experience. But Micah Hyde and Jamison Crowder are both practicing. They're in that 21-day window, like I've mentioned before, but Hyde has been ruled out for this week. And of course, Crowder's not activated either. We may not see him because it's a crowded wide receiver room right now. But Hyde, we would all welcome back with open arms. Other matchups around the league, we've got Saturday's games. We had Seattle Seahawks, number 7 seed. They lost to San Francisco. It was close. I thought Geno Smith did well in the first half, and then 49ers just pulled away and trounced them, 41-23. Then the Chargers were up 27-0 and blew that lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence had 4 interceptions in the first half. He was able to overcome that and lead them to victory 31-30. And because of that, they've had some fireys. Their offensive coordinator for the Chargers has now been let go. So Brandon Staley is retaining his job, but they have let go of their offensive coordinator. Then Sunday's games, we had Minnesota Vikings, the number 3 seed, who I've been pounding the tables about how they've won 11 of their one-score games, right? Especially the Bills won in overtime. It's a little touchy. I was at the game. But the Bills, I feel like as much as they've had up and down season, they're 13-3. They lost 3 games by a total of 8 points, where the Vikings, when they lost, they got blown out. And in this game, they went against the number 6 seed Giants and lost 31-24. Greg's brother, Darren, has been mentioning all season how their offensive coordinator on 3rd and short, 3rd and long, doesn't matter, he's throwing little dump-off passes that are 3 to 5 yards short of the 6. It doesn't make sense, especially when you have Delvin Cook and you've got Kirk Cousins being able to throw 1,800 yards to Justin Jefferson, who to me was obviously a top 5 player in the league. He's probably going to be a MVP finalist. In my opinion, if it wasn't just a QB award unofficially, Jefferson 1,800 plus yards, it's just unreal. And they still managed to screw it up. So good for Brian Daboll and the Giants. I'll be rooting for them, even though they've got a tough battle next week or this weekend. Number 6 seed Baltimore, which is another divisional game against Cincinnati in the wild card round. They lost a tough one. It was a 14-point swing. It was 17-17. Baltimore was at the goal line about to score, and Huntley jumped up about a half yard short. Ball got swatted. Sam Hubbard ran it back 98 yards for a fumble return for a touchdown. That was pretty heartbreaking for Baltimore, who now has officially canned their offensive coordinator after 6 years, Greg Roman. I felt like he didn't do enough with J.K. Dobbins, who was very pissed after the game. When you've got a running back, it's a lot like that Seattle loss in the Super Bowl, where they decided to throw it. Marcus Peters gets it, and of course, everyone knows what happened after that. The Patriots won. You have a running back who's just been a stud since he's come back from injury, and you flubbed it. You screwed up. That 14-point swing, you can't come back from with 5 minutes left in the game. I don't care who you are. Obviously, Mr. Tom Brady couldn't come back from being behind either this weekend. Sam Hubbard had the 3rd longest defensive touchdown in NFL postseason history, and it was the longest fumble return And do you know who number 1 is? Who's tied for number 1? That's Taron Johnson against the Baltimore Ravens. 101 yards, coincidentally, against the same team back in 2020. And tied for first in 1993, George Teague. Number 2 was James Harrison for Pittsburgh. It was 100 yards. And tied for 3 is Darrell Ray for the New York Jets at 98 yards. Monday night's game, number 4 Tampa Bay, who backed into the playoffs as a number 4 seed, but because they won their hapless division, they were 8-9 with a losing record. First time in Brady's career that he went into the postseason with a losing record, but just like last year, he was one and done. They lost to Dallas 31-14. People expected that to be a lot closer because Brady was previously 7-0 against Dallas. So that makes this week's bracket the AFC. Number 1 KC, who was on bye, will face the number 4 Jacksonville Jaguars at home at Arrowhead. The number 2 Buffalo Bills will face the Cincinnati Bengals. This time, it'll be a full game, no contest, and that'll be in Buffalo. And in the NFC, you've got Philly, who was on bye, now playing the Giants, hosting them at home in Philly. And the number 2 San Francisco 49ers are hosting the number 5 Dallas Cowboys. Bucks fire offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich. This is only a year after him being a finalist for the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching position. So the good news is there's a lot of head coaching vacancies, so he could interview for one of those. Maybe the silver lining here is that he gets an opportunity to go elsewhere because Brady might be retiring. His numbers for the previous 3 years were great. He was number 3, number 2, and number 3, I believe, as far as the offense, points per game and overall. And then this year they slid to 25th. He had 18.4 points per game, and you're out of here. I feel like that's a scapegoat issue. I don't think Byron Leftwich was the issue whatsoever. But I digress. Greg Roman, as I mentioned, in Baltimore, they mutually part ways, which means he accepted being fired. He didn't have a choice. I felt like 6 seasons was a long time for him there. He's been inept other than running. And this year, when you're not looking to your running back Dobbins at the goal line, when you have a backup quarterback starting for you who's giving you the go-ahead score and you flub it, yeah, you got to go. You can't jump over when everyone's crowded to the middle. You need to go under or around or hand it off to J.K. Dobbins maybe. So Greg Roman, bye-bye. I think they also did that to appease Dobbins and Jackson, who they're trying to have negotiations with this offseason. Jackson represents himself. They didn't sign him for his 5th-year option, so they dragged their feet all the way through, where obviously he's done more than enough to secure a new contract, and one that may or may not be with the Baltimore Ravens. He could end up in the AFC East. He could go to the Jets, where they have Garrett Wilson and some of these other young receivers. And obviously, like I said, Breece Hall, and then they traded for the running back from the Jaguars. Will Tom Brady retire or come back? What do you think over there, Chris?
He's going to keep playing.
Jesus. You know, he loses his wife. He goes to a second franchise, spends 3 years there. Wins the Super Bowl the first year. It's a feel-good story. Second year, one and done in the playoffs. Third year, one and done. He still was second in the league in yards as a quarterback, even though he looked like shit. I felt like so many missed opportunities with Mike Evans, with Godwin, with the running backs. They're just lucky to have a young set of receivers still. Mike Evans is not that old, and he's had like 6 or 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. I feel like Brady's going to be moving on, maybe even to the Raiders or something like that. They're betting a lot on that. And don't forget that Josh McDaniels, who comes through the Patriots regime of Bill Belichick's quarterbacks and quarterbacks coaches and then offensive coordinators. I don't see him with the Raiders, do you?
I do not.
I do not. Okay, well, the Titans, we keep talking about, I'm talking about firings. They hired the 49ers director of player personnel, Ran Carthon, as their new general manager. And I believe he becomes the 8th black general manager in the NFL. I know a lot of people think the Rooney Rule is a farce, but hey, 1/4 of the NFL GMs are represented by African Americans. The Colts have interviewed Dan Quinn, which is a Cowboys defensive coordinator. Obviously, the Cowboys are still in the playoffs. Here's the funny part. Not the funny part, the tricky part. Dan Quinn he was the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons, whose quarterback at the time was Matt Ryan, who the Colts ended up having. And they had trouble with him. So after benching him a couple times, are they going to double down and try to get Dan Quinn and then keep Matt Ryan, who's 38 now? I don't know. It's a little weird. I do think Dan Quinn deserves an opportunity, but he might be another one of those Rex Ryans where they're a lot better at being a defensive coordinator than they are a head coach, and that might be the situation with him. Other people that the Colts have interviewed, Mike Kafka from the Giants, he is 35 and the offensive coordinator. D'Amico Ryans is a 49ers defensive coordinator, and he's being interviewed as well. He's only 38. Don Wink Martindale, 59. He is the former defensive coordinator for the Broncos, the Ravens, and the Giants, and they have other interviews with Aaron Glenn, Shane Steichen, Ben Johnson, Raheem Mostert, Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City, Ajiro Aviro, Buddy Vitrone, and Jeff Saturday, who is the interim head coach. They just interviewed him, I believe, today. That's 12 interviews for the vacancy of head coach. So Jim Irsay has his plate full. Other head coaching vacancies, as of the regular season, you have the Texans, the Carolina Panthers, the Arizona Cardinals, and the Denver Broncos, which, funny enough, Nathaniel Hackett, who went from the Bills to the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers made him look good, and then he went over to head coach for the Broncos, and they're thinking, oh man, he's going to be lucky to have Russell Wilson. He's one and done. He's out. So we'll see if he actually gets an opportunity to be a head coach again. I sure as hell hope not, but he is actually going for an offensive coordinator job for the New York Jets. We will see. I just have to laugh at that. I don't think that that's the right move for the Jets. But hey, have at it. Make the AFC East a little weaker for the Bills. Cardinals wide receiver coach and assistant head coach is interviewing for the Patriots offensive coordinator job. As you know, they had a defensive coordinator. You know, Bill Belichick's always trying to look outside of the box, and he gets Matt Patricia, his former defensive coordinator, to start play calling on the offense. As much as they did okay, Mac Jones improved in some regard, that was not the right move, and I don't think he's going to be retained, which is why they're doing these other interviews. So yeah, Cardinals, he's not only a wide receivers coach, but he's assistant head coach. We'll see what he does. The other option is Alabama's Bill O'Brien, who also comes from the Bill Belichick tree, is getting an interview in Arizona. Patriots have requested permission to speak with the Vikings wide receiver coach, Keenan McCardell, for their offensive coach job as well. And Bill Belichick's coaching tree has now only 2 more playoff wins by head coaches from his tree than Sean McDermott's tree. Brian Dable obviously has a playoff victory already, but that goes to show you that Bill Belichick, who's been an amazing head coach and GM in the eyes of the NFL for over 20 years, just didn't really get guys that like stick in the league as head coaches. Maybe they're good defensive coordinators or other coordinators, but I think the way Belichick coaches, he's very hard-nosed and kind of tough, and when you listen to his post-game pressers, he just has no energy, no personality. But then I've seen him where he's sitting there with news anchors and on Sports Center, and he's all chipper and talking like normal, and it feels so weird because he's actually a normal human being when he's not talking to these guys, news reporters that he hates. Clearly, he hates them. Okay, last but not least, ESPN named Josh Allen the number 2 player on the top 100 MVP list around the league. So out of the most valuable players in the top 10, it's Mahomes number 1, Allen number 2, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and number 5, Justin Jefferson. Number 6, Tyreek Hill. 7, Justin Herbert. 8, Trevor Lawrence. 9, Myles Garrett. And 10, Nick Bosa. Like I've previously said in other episodes, I think Nick Bosa could easily be defensive MVP of the year. I think he had 18.5 sacks going into the last game of the regular season. I have no idea, but I think he's probably over 20 at this point. But that'll do it for other league news. So we've got the Buffalo Bills recap of the Bills versus the Dolphins. Bills squeak by 34-31. You've got a bunch of hirings and firings and other outcomes. And as you know, there's 4 more matchups. Eliminate down to the AFC Championship to the Super Bowl, which is going to be played in Arizona this year. So I would love for that to be the Bills. I think that would be a pretty easy flight to go to. Chris, would you go?
I am going.
You are going?
Yes, I am.
You're going to the Atlanta game, aren't you?
I'm trying to do both.
I'm trying to do both. He's off camera going, I'm trying to do both. The Josh Allen card of the day, I've got this 2018 Origins. What I like most about this card is that it was a Ralph Wilson at the time. I believe it was New Era. This was a stadium exclusive card that they put in a pack with the rest of the 2018 rosters. There was like probably 7 cards I have from that pack. This is his rookie card, which you could have only gotten if you were at the stadium that game. So that's my favorite, one of my favorite cards. I love the Origin series in general from Panini. And I've got DeMar Hamlin still here because hopefully this weekend he's going to be at that game because he's been in the facility now. Not only was he back in Buffalo and rehabbing, at home, but with the team. And now he's been in the facility every day. I suspect he's going to be running through that tunnel along with Eric Molds this weekend. I want to give a big shout out to the Cheerful Bullpen and Amy, the co-owner there. She welcomed us in there to do a live show. If you missed it, I will link that in the description. If you're listening to this podcast, it should have already been posted as episode 32. I want to reference back to Greg's epic table smash. So we normally get these lifetime tables that are $65. He went to Walmart and got this cheap plastic table that was $44. We probably could have karate chopped through it, but he went up high because, as we learned from my wedding, I tried to jump through that lifetime table and it took 4 other guys jumping on me and the table to break it because it's durable. It was good. The hardware for this one was not. The screws went ping, ping, and he went straight to the ground, barely broke his fall, and I would suspect he's got a nice little tailbone that's crooked for a while. So he took a break from the episode. All right, well, that's going to do it. This is episode 33 of The House at Allenville. I'm Scott Kinmartin. Greg's not with me as always, but he's in here, right here in my heart. But we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Let's go, Buffalo! Ah! All right, check. 1, 2. Here we go. That was DeMar Hamlin.
You want me to grab some powder for your nose? No?
Are you my fluffer? Thanks, babe. Appreciate it. Yeah,
I'll come back and do an episode with you next year.
Yeah? Well, you're going to do one today, right?
I'm going to try.
Okay, good. Sometimes we cut each other off. Sometimes he's stuttering or I, ramble on something that had nothing to do with it. You see I improvise a bit here and there. A couple times I screwed up. It's whatever. Usually there's bloopers. I probably won't even include him in this one just to get an episode up.